to ask your questions today to clarify any outstanding concerns that you may have about this number or that number, and I'm sure that we can provide an explanation as to why someone may make a mistake. I mean, for instance, when I went through the math on my own savings, a 30% contribution to health care is not the same as a 30% total package reduction, right? So that's why you have to, be clear about what it is you're comparing, so you've got apples to apples. Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, but just talking about the numbers, when we had a chance to speak with someone from the police union, they mentioned 58 police officers being funded through outside grants, and the city essentially only paying for 18 police officers, which seemed to be a rather low number just in terms of their breaking up. They broke down the whole thing to 76,000, but also just this pool of grant money funding the bulk of the police officers, the patrol officers on the street. Is that the case? It's
a lot more complicated than that. The funding for our police operations, let's put it that way, because they're not just the patrol officers, it's the entire police department. That's funded through the general fund as well as through the neighborhood policing millage. Now, revenues are collected into that general fund through a partnership with the schools for liaison officers. They're collected through the prosecutor's grant from the federal government for community policing on the south side. We have the Mott Foundation grant for foot patrol. We have the federal stimulus-funded Department of Justice COPS grant for officers. So the total funding for police comes from a wide variety of revenue sources on our books. It comes out of the general fund and out of the neighborhood policing millage.
Well, I guess what he was trying to allege is that, hey, a lot of the police officers are being funded by grant money. Rod tried to, decimate the force already through getting all this grant money from other places.
In the changes that we're, to that point, the changes that we're making, we are not sacrificing one grant dollar in these adjustments. So all of the grants are able to adjust in who they're funding. They don't fund a police officer by name. They fund a position and a function, and that function is able to transfer to an officer. It's the union contracts that require that all of these decisions are made purely on the basis of seniority. There's no consideration of performance. There's no consideration of expertise in a particular area. It's a pure seniority-based system, and that's something that the unions have insisted on in their contracts throughout the years.
I guess another question: are these positions the number of positions for the police department that'll be laid off? Does that include the 2 patrol officers in downtown Flint as well? Or
it does not. Those are, we could continue with some dedicated resources. We have dedicated officers at Kettering University. Okay. We have dedicated officers at Hurley, 2 in downtown. All of those designated functions that we're drawing down dollars in order to provide, will continue those services. Okay.
How many people does that mean then will be, patrolling the street tomorrow? How many police cars are going to be on the street? How many officers are going to be in those cars?
Right.
Do we have any details about that?
We can give you an estimate. I mean, over the course of a day, there's how many officers who are on the street.
Well, that depends. They call in sick, they call in for vacation, so we can't give you a dedicated number.
Right.
But, so that number is hard to give you, because that depends on who comes to work and who doesn't come to work. So, when they tell you we're only going to have 4 officers working, how do they know that? We don't even know that. So, that's a hard answer to give you.
It's also more than we'd like to describe in detail our public safety strategies. We're not going to get into the actual numbers of employees per hour, per part of town. That's information that we don't want our criminal element to have. What you do know from our public statements is that we have a community foot patrol officer who will be dedicated in each ward on first shift and on second shift. You know the kinds of special initiatives that we just talked through, the task forces that remain active that the force will continue to support. There's been no change in those. And we'll have our ongoing general patrols and our directed patrols.
Well, the layoffs tomorrow, but where do you go from here in terms of sitting down and talking to both unions from the fire and police? I mean, is there something else in the works here?
Yes, it's the required legal arbitration that's available to resolve contract impasses. These are public safety unions who under Michigan law are not able to strike. They continue to be paid at the level of the last signed contract, the contract that this community can no longer afford. So we have taken steps to prepare through required mediation sessions for that to move forward into arbitration. That can be a lengthy process. It can also, it could be more than a year if it goes its full duration. During that time, we'll continue to talk, to share proposals. But again, every union member has a vote as to what they'll agree to with their contract. And at the end of the day, there's nothing that I can do as mayor or the chief can do to force those employees to accept a change. It can only be achieved if we work together. And while the rest of workers at City Hall have been making sacrifices, our public safety unions have refused.
Two questions. How much is that litigation going to cost the city? And if we're laying off police officers, why are we buying police vehicles?
Right. Those are dedicated. So we start with the police vehicles. Because we're dedicated to using every tool available to help this community as officers fight crime. We have dedicated federal funds that'll cover police vehicles, upgrades in technology, a variety of U.S. Department of Justice programs that cover some portion of overtime for certain activities. So we continue to draw all of those down aggressively. If that technology can get an officer to the scene 30 seconds faster, if a new vehicle that has less than 100,000 miles can get an officer to a scene, a few seconds faster than otherwise, then those are advantages that we want to take, that we want to use, and those are not general fund dollars that are being used. Those are designated grant dollars that can only be used for those select purposes.
And then the litigation, or the
litigation, if it goes all the way through a more than a year process, it's expensive. It's tens of thousands of dollars. And again, that's a choice that the unions are making by not agreeing to a double-digit concession.
So you're asking for 85, they're saying 79. Are you going to meet somewhere in between, or are you firm on the 15% that you have to have?
15% is what we have to achieve. Again, you have to go back to, this city had a larger tax base in 2005. We're now 5 years later. Those costs are 40% greater than they were, and this community has less resources to work with. So 15%, in my mind, is a reasonable target. It's between what I've done myself, what my appointees, almost all of whom just started. They didn't benefit from the years of benefits and retirements, and they've given back more than double digits.
So are you considering like a sliding scale in this contract? So 5 years down the road, the people aren't stuck with this 15% that you set up?
It's a 3-year contract. So